The alien vessel hovered silently in the dark void of space, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the faint glow of a distant star. Below it, the planet Epsilon 7 loomed large, a swirling mass of greens, browns, and sickly yellows. It was a Class 13, Deathworld, a designation reserved for planets so hostile that most species avoided them entirely. The atmosphere was toxic, the wildlife was aggressive, and the terrain was unpredictable. Yet as Captain Leora Voss stared at the readings on her console, she couldn't ignore the evidence. Humans were down there. Leora leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes narrowing as she processed the information. Her people, the Zinthari, had long considered humans to be fragile creatures. They weren't physically strong like the Kraloths or technologically advanced like the Zytherians. And yet, here they were, not just surviving but thriving on one of the deadliest planets in the known galaxy. She tapped her fingers on the armrest, her curiosity piqued. What drove these beings to challenge such impossible odds? Were they desperate, reckless, or was there something else at play? "Commander," she called out, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare a shuttle, I'm going down there." Her second-in-command, Joran, turned to face her. His expression was a mix of concern and disbelief. "Captain, are you sure about this? The reports indicate extreme environmental hazards. Even our suits might not hold up for long." "I didn't ask for your opinion," Leora replied, though her tone wasn't harsh. "I need answers. If humans can survive here, we need to understand why. Prepare the team." Minutes later, Leora stood inside the shuttle, flanked by two other members of her crew. As they descended toward the surface of Epsilon 7, the view outside grew increasingly ominous. Thick clouds obscured much of the landscape, but flashes of movement could be seen beneath, a reminder that this world was alive and not in a friendly way. When they broke through the cloud cover, the true nature of the planet revealed itself. Towering trees with jagged leaves stretched toward the sky, their trunks oozing a viscous black liquid. Strange creatures scuttled across the ground, their forms both alien and terrifying. The shuttle landed near a clearing where signs of human activity were evident. Tents made from reinforced materials dotted the area, surrounded by makeshift barriers designed to keep predators at bay. Leora stepped out cautiously, her boots sinking slightly into the damp soil. The air smelled foul, a mix of decay and chemicals, but her suit filtered out the worst of it. Around her, the sounds of the jungle echoed, growls, hisses, and the occasional rustling of leaves. It was clear that danger lurked everywhere. Before she could take more than a few steps, a group of humans emerged from the tree line. They moved with confidence, their weapons slung casually over their shoulders. At the front was a tall man with short brown hair and piercing blue eyes. He wore rugged clothing smeared with dirt and what looked like dried blood. His name, she would soon learn, was Ethan Cole. Ethan stopped a few feet away, studying the newcomers, with a mixture of caution and amusement. "Well," he said, breaking the silence, "this is a first. Aliens showing up uninvited. Guess we should have put out a welcome mat." Leora tilted her head, intrigued by his casual demeanor. Most beings would have been terrified or defensive upon encountering an unknown species, but Ethan seemed almost relaxed. "We mean no harm," she replied, her voice translated into English through her suit's built-in system. "We observed your presence from orbit and came to investigate." One of the other humans, a woman with curly red hair tied back in a ponytail, stepped forward. Her name tag read Rachel Meyer. She crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. "You're not exactly blending in, you know. That ship of yours sticks out like a sore thumb." Ethan chuckled, clearly entertained by Rachel's comment. "Relax, Rach. Let's hear what they have to say before we start accusing them of anything." Leora nodded, appreciating his attempt to keep the situation calm. "My name is Leora Voss. I am captain of the Zinthari vessel currently in orbit. We were monitoring this region when we detected human life forms on this planet. Given the classification of Epsilon 7, we found it unusual." "Unusual?" Ethan repeated, his lips curling into a smirk. "You mean because it's supposed to be uninhabitable?" "Yes," Leora confirmed. Most species avoid Class 13 Deathworlds. The risks far outweigh any potential benefits. Why are you here? Ethan glanced at his companions, who exchanged knowing looks. Finally, he shrugged. Why does anyone do anything? Adventure? Challenge? Bragging rights? Take your pick. Leora frowned, unsure if he was being serious. This is not a game. The dangers here are real. I watched one of your kind nearly become prey to a predator moments ago. That happens, Ethan admitted without missing a beat. But hey, nobody said it'd be easy. If we wanted safe, we'd stay home. Another member of the group, a stocky man with a scruffy beard, chimed in. His name tag identified him as Daniel Hayes. Look, lady, we're not here because we have to be. We're here because we choose to be. There's a difference. Leora's gaze shifted between them, trying to comprehend their mindset. Back on her homeworld, survival was a matter of necessity. People sought comfort, security, and stability. These humans, however, appeared to revel in chaos. It was baffling and fascinating. Rachel, sensing Leora's confusion, decided to elaborate. Humans have always pushed boundaries. We climb mountains, dive into the ocean depths, explore space. It's in our nature to seek challenges. This place, it's just another mountain to climb. And if you fall? Leora asked, her tone neutral. Then we fall, Ethan said simply. But until then, we keep moving forward. The simplicity of his response struck a chord within Leora. There was a raw honesty to it, a refusal to let fear dictate their actions. She realized that these humans weren't reckless. They were driven by something deeper, something primal. Survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about proving that they could overcome anything. As the conversation continued, Leora found herself drawn to their perspective. They spoke of Earth's history, of disasters and conflicts that had shaped their species. They described how humanity had risen from the ashes time and again, refusing to be extinguished. To them, Epsilon 7 wasn't a death sentence, it was an opportunity. By the time the discussion ended, Leora felt a newfound respect for these strange beings. Their methods might have been unconventional, even foolhardy, but their spirit was undeniable. Before leaving, she extended an invitation to join them on their next expedition. She wanted to see firsthand how they operated, how they faced the terrors of this world with such unwavering resolve. Ethan agreed, though not without a hint of mischief in his eyes. All right, Captain Voss, you want to see how we handle ourselves? Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. The next morning, the human camp buzzed with activity as Ethan and his team prepared for their journey into the heart of Epsilon 7's jungle. Leora stood nearby, observing their routine with quiet fascination. The humans moved with purpose, packing supplies, checking weapons, and securing gear. There was no hesitation, no sign of fear, just a calm efficiency that spoke volumes about their experience. Ethan approached Leora, adjusting the straps of his backpack. Ready for your first workout? He asked with a grin. His tone was light, but there was an underlying seriousness in his eyes. He wasn't mocking her. He was testing her resolve. Leora nodded, her expression unreadable behind her helmet. I am prepared, she replied evenly. Inside, however, she felt a flicker of unease. She had studied countless reports about Class 13 Deathworlds, but reading about danger and stepping into it were two very different things. Still, she couldn't back down now. This was her chance to understand these humans better, to see what made them tick. Rachel handed Leora a small device, explaining its function. It's a tracker. If you get lost or separated, we can find you. Not that I think you will, she added with a smirk. Just don't wander off. I'll keep that in mind, Leora said, clipping the device to her belt. She appreciated the gesture, though she doubted she'd need it. Zenthari training emphasized discipline and focus, qualities she intended to rely on heavily during this expedition. As the group set off, the jungle quickly swallowed them whole. Towering trees blocked out much of the sunlight, casting everything in shadow. The air was thick and humid, making each breath feel heavier than the last. Strange noises echoed around them, hisses, growls, and the occasional rustle of leaves, but the humans paid them little mind. To them, it seemed, such sounds were part of the background music of their lives. Daniel took the lead, his machete slicing through dense undergrowth with practiced ease. Behind him, Claire paused occasionally to examine plants, jotting notes in a waterproof notebook. Her fascination with the deadly flora was evident, even as she carefully avoided touching anything that might bite back. Rachel stayed close to Leora, keeping an eye on the alien captain while also scanning their surroundings for threats. For her part, Leora struggled to adapt. Her suit filtered out the worst of the toxins in the air, but it couldn't shield her from the oppressive heat or the uneven terrain. Every step required effort, and her muscles burned in ways they hadn't in years. Yet, despite the discomfort, she refused to show weakness. These humans were watching her, and she wouldn't give them any reason to doubt her capabilities. After several hours of steady progress, the group reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive predator, its sleek black body glistening with venomous secretions. Multiple eyes glinted menacingly as it turned to face them, its movements slow and deliberate. Leora froze, her instincts screaming at her to retreat. But the humans didn't hesitate. "Everyone stay calm," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. He stepped forward, raising his weapon, a compact rifle designed for precision shots. Beside him, Daniel pulled out a flare gun, aiming it at the creature's head. "We've dealt with worse." Before Leora could process what was happening, the humans sprang into action. Ethan fired a single shot, striking the creature's shoulder and forcing it to recoil. Daniel followed up with the flare, which exploded upon impact, blinding the beast temporarily. Claire tossed a smoke grenade into the mix, creating a cloud of cover that allowed the group to regroup. Leora watched in stunned silence as the humans executed their plan with flawless coordination. Each member knew their role, working together, seamlessly to neutralize the threat. Within moments, the predator retreated, disappearing into the jungle with a final, angry roar. When the dust settled, Ethan turned to Leora, his expression smug. "See? Easy." "Easy?" Leora repeated, incredulous. "That creature could have killed us." "Could have," Ethan agreed with a shrug. "But it didn't. That's the point. You prepare for the worst, and you handle whatever comes your way." Rachel chimed in, her tone matter of fact. "Out here, panic gets you killed. We don't have time for it. You either act or you die." Leora mulled over their words, realizing how deeply ingrained this mindset was in their culture. For them, survival wasn't just about physical strength or advanced technology. It was about mental fortitude. They faced danger head-on, trusting in their skills and teamwork to pull them through. It was a philosophy that resonated with her, though she still found it difficult to fully embrace. As they continued deeper into the jungle, Leora began to notice subtle details she had missed before. The way Ethan scanned the horizon constantly, anticipating potential threats. The way Rachel carried herself, always ready to spring into action. The quiet confidence Daniel exuded, even when surrounded by peril. And then there was Claire, whose curiosity never wavered, not even in the face of danger. At one point, the group stopped to rest near a stream. Leora knelt beside the water, examining its murky surface. "Is it safe to drink?" she asked, looking up at Claire. The botanist shook her head. "Not unless you want to risk poisoning yourself. Most water sources here are contaminated. We purify everything before using it." Leora nodded, filing the information away. She noticed how the humans rationed their supplies carefully, ensuring they had enough to last until they returned to camp. Nothing was wasted, not even energy. Every movement, every decision, was calculated to maximize efficiency. During the break, Ethan sat down beside Leora, offering her a piece of dried fruit. "You're holding up pretty well," he remarked, his tone casual. "I figured you'd be struggling more. I admit this is challenging," Leora replied, accepting the food. "But I have learned much already." "Like what?" "That your kind does not fear death," she said after a moment's thought. Or rather, you accept it as part of life. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, something like that. Doesn't mean we go looking for trouble, though. We just don't let it stop us from doing what needs to be done. Leora considered his words, finding truth in them. Humans weren't reckless. They were pragmatic. They understood the risks and accepted them willingly, driven by a desire to push boundaries and explore the unknown. It was a trait she admired, even if she didn't fully understand it yet. As the day wore on, the challenges only grew greater. A sudden storm drenched the group, turning the ground into slippery mud. Poisonous vines lashed out at them, forcing Claire to use a specialized tool to cut them down safely. At one point, a sinkhole nearly swallowed Daniel whole, prompting a frantic rescue effort that left everyone breathless. Through it all, Leora remained determined to keep up. She stumbled occasionally, cursed silently when her footing failed her, and gritted her teeth against the pain in her legs. But she never gave up. By the time they reached their destination, a rocky outcrop overlooking a vast valley, she felt a sense of accomplishment that surprised her. Ethan stood beside her, gazing out at the view. Not bad, huh? He said, gesturing toward the horizon. This is why we do it. For moments like this. Leora followed his gaze, taking in the breathtaking landscape. Despite its dangers, Epsilon 7 was undeniably beautiful. The jagged peaks, the lush forests, the endless expanse of wilderness, it was a testament to nature's raw power and resilience. You are remarkable, she said softly, speaking more to herself than to Ethan. Your courage, your determination. I underestimated you. Ethan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. Don't worry about it, happens all the time. Just wait till you see what else we're capable of. Leora smiled beneath her helmet, feeling a newfound respect for these humans. They weren't invincible, but they didn't need to be. Their strength lay in their adaptability, their teamwork, and their refusal to give up. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in shades of orange and red, she realized that she had gained more than just knowledge on this trip. She had gained perspective, and perhaps a bit of inspiration. The next phase of the journey began at dawn, with the group setting out from their rocky vantage point. The air was cooler now, though it carried the same oppressive weight as before. Leora adjusted her suit, ensuring its filters were functioning properly. She had grown accustomed to the constant hum of the equipment around her, but the jungle's unrelenting hostility still demanded her full attention. Ethan led the way, his movements deliberate and confident. He seemed to glide through the dense undergrowth, avoiding hazards that would have tripped up most others. Claire followed close behind him, her eyes scanning the vegetation for anything unusual. Daniel brought up the rear, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings while Rachel stayed near Leora, ready to intervene if the alien captain needed assistance. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, the terrain became increasingly treacherous. Massive roots twisted across the ground like serpents, forcing the group to climb over or navigate around them carefully. The soil beneath their feet was slick with moisture, making every step precarious. Leora found herself relying more on her hands than her legs, using vines and branches to steady herself as she moved forward. It was exhausting work, but she refused to slow the group down. At one point, they came across a wide river cutting through the forest. Its waters churned violently, carrying debris from upstream. Crossing it would be dangerous, but turning back wasn't an option. Ethan studied the scene for a moment before pointing to a fallen tree spanning the riverbank. We'll use that, he said, his voice calm despite the obvious risks. Leora frowned, examining the makeshift bridge skeptically. The tree looked unstable, its bark slick with algae and moss. One wrong step could send someone tumbling into the raging current below. Yet, without hesitation, Ethan stepped onto the trunk, testing its strength before motioning for the others to follow. Rachel went next, moving quickly and lightly across the log. Claire followed, her movements slower but equally careful. When it was Leora's turn, she hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod. You've got this, he said simply. Taking a deep Breath Leora placed one foot on the tree, then the other. Her balance wavered slightly, but she steadied herself by gripping a nearby branch. Step by step, she made her way across, her muscles tense with effort. By the time she reached the other side, relief washed over her, though she didn't let it show. Instead, she nodded tersely to Ethan, signaling that she was ready to continue. As the day wore on, the jungle seemed to grow angrier, as if it resented their intrusion. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, their glowing eyes tracking the group's progress. Some darted away when noticed, while others lingered, watching silently. Leora couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted, even if nothing directly attacked them. It wasn't until mid-afternoon that the true danger revealed itself. The group stumbled upon a clearing filled with carnivorous plants, towering, stalks topped with sharp-toothed blooms that snapped shut whenever something ventured too close. Claire immediately crouched down to examine them, her fascination overriding her caution. "These are incredible," she murmured, jotting notes furiously. "They're perfectly adapted to trap prey." "Yeah, well, let's not get caught," Daniel muttered, nudging her gently. "Keep moving." Before they could decide how to proceed, a low rumble echoed through the clearing. The ground trembled slightly, and then a massive creature emerged from the trees. A hulking beast covered in thick armored scales. Its mouth was lined with rows of jagged teeth, and its claws gouged deep furrows into the earth as it moved. The humans froze, their weapons raised instinctively. "Everyone stay quiet," Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't make any sudden moves." For several tense moments, the creature sniffed the air, its head swiveling slowly, as it searched for the source of the disturbance. Leora held her breath, her hand hovering near the weapon at her side. She knew it wouldn't do much against a creature of this size, but she refused to stand idle if things turned violent. Finally, the beast let out a guttural growl and lumbered off, disappearing into the jungle. The group exhaled collectively, lowering their weapons. Rachel wiped sweat from her brow, muttering, "That was too close." "No kidding," Daniel agreed, his usual humor replaced by grim seriousness. "Let's pick up the pace. I don't want to be here if it comes back." They hurried through the clearing, putting as much distance between themselves and the creature as possible. As they walked, Leora noticed how the humans maintained their composure despite the near miss. There was no panic, no second-guessing, just a shared understanding that they had done what needed to be done and now had to focus on surviving. By evening, they reached a secluded area where the vegetation thinned out slightly, revealing a patch of solid ground. Ethan called for a halt, signaling that they would camp there for the night. The humans worked efficiently to set up a temporary shelter, using tarps and stakes to create a barrier against potential threats. A small fire crackled in the center of their makeshift camp, providing both warmth and light. As they settled in, Leora took a seat near the fire, her body aching from the day's exertions. Ethan joined her, handing her a ration pack. "Not exactly gourmet, but it gets the job done," he said with a grin. "Thank you," Leora replied, opening the package cautiously. Inside was a bland-looking paste that smelled faintly of nuts and spices. She took a small bite, surprised to find, "It's surprisingly edible. You seem different tonight," Ethan remarked after a moment. "Less guarded." Leora considered his observation, choosing her words carefully. "I suppose I am. Today has been enlightening. I underestimated your kind, and I see now that was a mistake." Ethan chuckled softly. "Happens to the best of us. Humans aren't perfect, we mess up all the time, but we learn, we adapt, that's our edge. And your willingness to face danger," Leora added. "It is admirable." "Admirable or stupid, depending on who you ask," Daniel interjected, joining the conversation. He sat down beside them, stretching his legs toward the fire. "Some people think we're crazy for doing this stuff. Maybe they're right. But sitting safe at home doesn't teach you much about yourself." Claire nodded in agreement, leaning against a tree nearby. "Every challenge we take on shows us what we're capable of. Out here, we don't have the luxury of excuses. If we fail, we pay the price." Leora absorbed their words, reflecting on how different their perspective was from her own. In Zenthari culture, survival was often viewed as a collective effort, with individuals prioritizing the safety of the group above personal ambition. These humans, however, embraced risk as a means of self-discovery. They pushed themselves to the brink not because they had to, but because they wanted to understand their limits and surpass them. As the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across their faces, Leora felt a sense of camaraderie she hadn't expected. Despite their differences, these humans had welcomed her into their world, sharing their experiences and insights without reservation. They weren't just teaching her about their species, they were showing her a new way of thinking. When the conversation eventually wound down, the group prepared to sleep, taking turns keeping watch throughout the night. Leora volunteered for the first shift, wanting to give her body time to recover before morning. As she sat alone by the fire, listening to the sounds of the jungle, she realized something important. She wasn't just observing these humans anymore. She was learning from them, and perhaps in some small way they were changing her. The fourth day of the expedition began with a thick fog blanketing the jungle, muffling sounds and obscuring visibility. The air felt heavier than usual, clinging to their skin and making every breath an effort. Ethan signaled for the group to move cautiously, his voice low as he reminded everyone to stay alert. Fog like this can hide anything, he warned. Keep your eyes open. Leora adjusted her visor, grateful for the enhanced optics built into her suit. Even so, the dense mist limited her range, forcing her to rely more on her instincts and the humans around her. She noticed how Ethan scanned the horizon constantly, his sharp gaze catching details others might miss. Rachel stayed close to him, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her weapon. Daniel and Claire flanked them, forming a loose perimeter that allowed them to cover each other. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, the terrain shifted unexpectedly. The ground sloped downward, leading them into a narrow ravine lined with jagged rocks. Water trickled along the bottom, creating a slippery path that required careful footing. Leora found herself gripping roots and outcroppings to maintain balance, her muscles straining under the added effort. Despite her advanced training, she couldn't match the humans' agility. They moved with practiced ease, navigating obstacles without hesitation. At one point, Claire paused to examine a cluster of strange fungi growing along the ravine walls. Their caps glowed faintly in the dim light, pulsing with an eerie rhythm. "These are fascinating," she murmured, snapping a few photos with a small camera. "They seem to emit some kind of bioluminescence. I've never seen anything like it. Just don't touch them," Rachel advised dryly. "Last time you got curious, we ended up running from a swarm of flying insects." Claire rolled her eyes but nodded, stepping back from the glowing fungi. "Relax, I know better now." Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Science or survival, pick one, Claire." "I can do both," she shot back, earning laughter from the group. Despite the light-hearted banter, tension lingered in the air. The ravine was unnaturally quiet, devoid of the usual sounds of wildlife. Even the trickle of water seemed muted, as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. Leora felt a prickle of unease crawl up her spine. Something wasn't right. Her suspicions were confirmed when they reached the end of the ravine. The path opened into a large cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. In the center of the space stood a massive structure, a monolith covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and writhe under scrutiny. "What is this place?" Leora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, her curiosity overriding her caution. "No idea," Ethan replied, his tone equally subdued. "But it's not natural. Someone, or something, built this." Claire approached the monolith, her fingers tracing the carvings gently. "It looks ancient. Maybe a civilization lived here long before the planet became uninhabitable. Or maybe they died trying to survive it," Daniel muttered grimly. Rachel pulled out a scanner, aiming it at the structure. "Whatever it is, It's giving off energy readings, strong ones. As they studied the monolith, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A low hum filled the cavern, growing louder with each passing second. The glowing symbols on the walls brightened, casting the space in an unsettling green light. Leora instinctively backed away, her hand moving to her weapon. "We need to leave. Now." Before anyone could respond, the entrance to the cavern collapsed, sealing them inside. Dust filled the air, choking them as panic set in. Ethan barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay calm, find another way out." The group spread out, searching the walls for any sign of an exit. Claire discovered a narrow tunnel partially hidden behind a pile of rubble. "Over, here," she called, waving the others over. "It's tight, but we can fit." "Let's move," Ethan said, ushering everyone toward the tunnel. Leora hesitated, glancing back at the monolith. Its carvings had begun to pulse in sync with the humming sound, as if responding to their presence. "We don't have time for sightseeing," Rachel snapped, grabbing Leora's arm. "Come on!" Reluctantly, Leora followed the group into the tunnel. It was cramped and dark, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. The air grew thinner, making it harder to breathe. Ahead, Ethan used a flashlight to illuminate the way, calling out reassurances whenever someone faltered. After what felt like hours, they emerged into another chamber. This one was smaller, but no less mysterious. The walls were lined with shelves, carved directly into the rock, each holding artifacts that glimmered faintly in the dim light. Weapons, tools, and strange devices lay scattered among the debris, remnants of a long-lost culture. "This changes everything," Claire whispered, her voice filled with awe. "If we can study these artifacts, we might learn why this planet turned hostile, and why whoever lived here didn't survive," Daniel added grimly. Leora examined the items closely, her mind racing. The craftsmanship was unlike anything she'd seen before, advanced yet alien. Whoever had created these objects possessed knowledge far beyond what humanity currently understood. Yet they had still fallen victim to Epsilon 7's unforgiving environment. "We can't stay here," Ethan reminded them firmly. "This place is unstable. Whatever caused that collapse could happen again." Claire reluctantly tore herself away from the artifacts, snapping a few final photos before rejoining the group. Together they searched for another exit, eventually finding a narrow passage leading upward. The climb was grueling, testing their endurance to the limit. By the time they reached the surface, the sun was setting, casting the jungle in hues of orange and red. Exhausted but alive, the group collapsed, onto the ground, catching their breath. Leora stared up at the sky, her thoughts swirling. She had come to Epsilon 7 seeking answers about humanity, but she had found something else entirely, a glimpse into the fragility of all life, no matter how resilient or advanced. Ethan sat beside her, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "So, what do you think now?" he asked, his tone lighter than before. "Still amazed by us?" Leora smiled faintly, her respect for these humans stronger than ever. "More than ever," she admitted. "You face danger, not because you have to, but because you choose to. That takes courage." "And stupidity," Rachel quipped, earning a chuckle from the group. "Maybe both," Ethan agreed. "But it's who we are. We push forward, no matter what." As night fell, the group settled down to rest, their bodies weary, but their spirits unbroken. Leora gazed at the stars, reflecting on everything she had witnessed. These humans weren't just survivors, they were explorers, driven by an insatiable curiosity and an unyielding determination to overcome adversity. And though she had started this journey questioning their methods, she now saw them for what they truly were, a species capable of greatness, even in the face of impossible odds. For the first time, Leora felt a flicker of envy, not for their technology or resources, but for their mindset. They embraced challenges not as burdens, but as opportunities to grow. It was a lesson she would carry with her long after leaving Epsilon 7. The final day of the expedition dawned with a sense of urgency. The group had spent the night near the edge of the jungle, their makeshift camp surrounded by the remnants of a recent storm. Broken branches and scattered leaves littered the ground, evidence of nature's relentless power. Ethan stood at the center of the clearing studying a map while the others packed up their gear. "We're close to the landing site," he announced, folding the map and tucking it into his pocket. "If we move quickly, we can reach it before noon." Leora nodded, her movements deliberate as she secured her equipment. She had grown more accustomed to the jungle's challenges over the past days, but the scars of their journey were evident. Her suit bore scratches and scuffs, and her body ached from countless hours of exertion. Still, she felt a sense of accomplishment that outweighed her fatigue. This trip had been unlike anything she had experienced before. As they set off, the jungle seemed quieter than usual, as if holding its breath in anticipation of their departure. The dense canopy above filtered sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor, creating an almost serene atmosphere. Yet beneath the surface, danger lurked. Every step carried the potential for disaster, a hidden predator, a venomous plant, or unstable terrain. Rachel walked beside Leora, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. "You've done well," she said, glancing at the alien captain. "Not everyone handles this place like you have." "I have learned much from all of you," Leora replied, her tone sincere. "Your strength is inspiring." Rachel smiled faintly, though her focus remained on the path ahead. "Strength isn't always about muscles or weapons. Sometimes it's about knowing when to push forward and when to hold back." Leora considered her words, realizing how true they were. These humans didn't rely solely on brute force. They balanced caution with boldness, strategy with instinct. It was a delicate dance, one that required both courage and wisdom. Midway through their trek, the group encountered another obstacle, a wide chasm cutting through the jungle. Its edges crumbled easily, making it impossible to cross without assistance. Ethan studied the gap for a moment before turning to Daniel. "Think we can rig something?" Daniel nodded, already unrolling a length of reinforced rope from his pack. Working together, the two men secured the line to sturdy trees on either side of the chasm, creating a makeshift bridge. Claire tested its stability first, crossing carefully while the others watched. Once she was safely on the other side, the rest followed one by one. When it was Leora's turn, she hesitated, gripping the rope tightly. Her earlier confidence wavered slightly as she looked down at the jagged rocks far below. Ethan noticed her hesitation and stepped closer. "You've got this," he encouraged. "Take it slow." Drawing a deep breath, Leora began her crossing, focusing on each step rather than the void beneath her. By the time she reached the other side, relief washed over her, though she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you," she said quietly, to Ethan, who simply grinned in response. As they continued onward, the landscape gradually shifted. The dense jungle gave way to open fields dotted with strange rock formations. In the distance, the sleek silhouette of Leora's shuttle came into view, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. The sight filled her with mixed emotions, relief at the thought of returning to familiar surroundings, but also a pang of regret at leaving this world behind. When they finally reached the landing site, the group paused to catch their breath. Ethan turned to Leora, his expression thoughtful. "This is it," he said. "Your ride home." "Yes," Leora replied, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "But I leave with more than I arrived with." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "More questions than answers?" "No," Leora said firmly. "Understanding, respect, admiration." Her words seemed to surprise him, but he quickly recovered, offering her a small smile. "Well, if you ever need more answers or just another adventure, you know where to find us." Leora nodded, appreciating the offer. "I may take you up on that." Before boarding the shuttle, she turned to address the entire group. "I came here to observe your kind, to understand why you thrive in places others fear. What I found was not just resilience, but a spirit unlike any I have seen. You do not shy away from danger. You embrace it. You face challenges not because you must, but because you choose to." "That is remarkable." Claire stepped forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Does that mean you'll tell your people about us?" About what you've seen? I will, Leora promised. And perhaps in time, our species will learn from each other. With that, she boarded the shuttle, taking one last look at the humans standing below. They waved as the vessel ascended, their figures growing smaller, until they disappeared entirely. As the shuttle broke through the atmosphere, Leora gazed out at the vast expanse of space, her mind replaying every moment of the journey. Back on her ship, Leora prepared her report for the Zenthari Federation. She described the dangers of Epsilon 7, the ingenuity of the humans, and the lessons she had learned. When her second-in-command, Joran, asked if humanity posed a threat, she shook her head. No, she said. They are not a threat. They are an example. Joran frowned, clearly puzzled. An example of what? Of what it means to live fully, Leora explained. To face fear and overcome it. To seek knowledge and growth, even in the harshest conditions. If there is anything we can learn from them, it is this. Survival is not just about enduring, it is about thriving. Her words lingered in the air as the ship charted a course for home. Leora knew her report would spark debate among her people, perhaps even skepticism. But she also knew the truth of what she had witnessed. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or numbers, but in their indomitable will to adapt, explore, and persevere. And somewhere, in the depths of space, the humans of Epsilon 7 continued their daily workout, unaware that their actions had left an indelible mark on an alien captain, and perhaps on the future of interstellar relations. For Leora, the journey had changed her perspective forever. Class 13. Deathworlds might be deadly, but to those who dared to face them, they were also opportunities, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, life could find a way to flourish.